Watching the Indian Express analysis by StudyIQ IS English, where we take up important articles from the newspaper, analyze them for you, and also to help you practice, we provide you prelims PYQs. We provide you practice questions in form of MCQs as well as mains answer writing initiative that will help you understand the syllabus quite well, help you implement the knowledge that you gain in the everyday session, and it will also help you do away with the fears of answer writing, which is very important if you want to get selected in the UPSC, because once you clear prelims, you understand the main challenge comes in forms of mains examination, and you have to appear in 9 papers in total where you have to write substantially. Hence, the inertia that any candidate faces initially as far as answer writing is concerned, that needs to be done away with. So, my intention by giving you mains questions every day is to help you get away with that inertia and help you inculcate the practice of answer writing. Understood? So today is 18th of January and today our discussion will involve as many as 6 articles which you can see behind me. These articles have been taken from today's newspaper. However, in terms of content which is relevant for UPSC, today's newspaper were quite thin. So I took the liberty that I covered previously left out articles from yesterday's newspaper also, and I took a liberty in taking an article from the website of Indian Express, which is very important from Indian Express, and I was surprised that such articles were not covered in the newspaper. So we'll deal with that article also. Now, as you can see, the question or the articles today, they are from various different subjects. For example, this Quad meeting, which is expected to happen in US once the President Trump is inaugurated into office on 20th of January. This highlights the syllabus important from the subject of IR, which is a part of GS paper 2 syllabus. So we'll try to understand what is this Quad grouping and why it is important for globe as well as for India. Also, there was this report which was published recently, QS Future Skills Report of 2025. And this report primarily deals with India's ability to provide for high-tech jobs for its population, and this is important from GS paper 2 syllabus. Why? Because the syllabus highlights the education and this report primarily deals with higher education, hence it is important for GS paper 2 syllabus. Understood? Now the third article is that the third launch pad for ISRO, which has been approved in the city of Harikota located in Andhra Pradesh. So why is launch pads developed on the eastern coast of India and what is the significance of this third launch pad for ISRO? We'll deal with this in today's discussion, and this is important from which part of the syllabus? GS paper 3, because the syllabus highlights the awareness related to space and India's space missions in general. Further, there was this debate that was became popular in the public lexicon because L&T's chairman, he highlighted that Indians in general should work about 90 hours every week. So we'll discuss the arguments both in favor and against such a decision of promoting such rigorous kind of a work week and work culture in India. And this is important from GS paper 1 perspective. Why? Because this GS paper 1 deals with the issue of Indian society, and you understand the relations of Indian people with respect to their work, with respect to their family. They are determined or they are part of society syllabus in the GS1. So such articles provides us the opportunity to critically evaluate any decisions made by the government or by the corporate culture in India, and which decisions that have an impact on the lexicon of Indian society in general. Understood? Also, from the polity section, I've taken up an article as Supreme Court 2 days back, it pulled up the Enforcement Directorate because Enforcement Directorate held that certain exemptions which are provided under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, it was not applicable on women and children. However, this stand of Enforcement Directorate, the Supreme Court actually got angry because of this stand and it pulled up the Enforcement Directorate. So in this article or the discussion, we'll take up what were the provisions that provides exemptions to women and children in seeking bail conditions, and also we'll be discussing about the Enforcement Directorate, which is an investigative agency under the Ministry of Finance. Hence, this kind of an article is important from GS paper 2 syllabus, that is polity. Now, before concluding our today's discussion, we'll also deal with why protesters want India to withdraw from WTO. So protesters naturally might be having some kind of a grievance, and this grievance is related to WTO, and they want that the government of India should actually pull out of WTO. Therefore, such an argument which deals primarily with decisions by the government to provide subsidies to farmer, they are important from economy point of view, hence GS3. Therefore, you can see questions are there from social sector, from society, from economy, from polity, and from science and tech. So this is quite a diverse discussion that we are going to have today. Now, before going ahead with today's article, I'll also emphasize on the need to subscribe to my Telegram channel, which is called ATS Live. As on this Telegram channel, I provide notes every day after the session ends, and also you have the opportunity to submit your answers on this channel, as it will allow me to help evaluate those answers and give you proper feedback, which is very essential whenever your preparation is going on. So, this is what I was saying, and before moving with today's discussion, let us try to solve yesterday's question that I gave you as a homework with reference to Indian Meteorological Department. Consider the following statements. Now, the IMD, it operates under Ministry of Science and Technology, and it is responsible for weather forecasting and seismology in India. Although it is responsible for weather forecasting and seismology, however, it does not come under Ministry of Science and Technology, rather it comes under Ministry of Earth Sciences. So, first statement therefore is incorrect. The IMD, it was established during British rule, and it is one of the oldest meteorological organizations in the world. Now, it is one of the oldest meteorological organization because it was established back in 1885, and therefore 2025 marks the 150 years of completion of WMD. Sorry, it was established in 1875. Therefore, 2025 is 150 year after the IMD was established. Also, the IMD provides weather related information for various sectors, including agriculture, aviation, disaster management. Now, you know, these kind of activities, they depend on weather forecasting quite a lot, because agriculture, you need water to grow crops, and you also need a good weather which will not destroy your crops. So therefore, farmers pay a close attention to how weather forecasting will be. Also, sectors such as aviation, that is flight of planes, it is dependent on the weather conditions, that what if there is a fog like conditions, or what if there is a heavy rainfall. So this will lead to disruption in aviation services. And also, disaster management is important from a weather related point of view, because significant or severe weather events like rainfall, floods, etc., they have impact on the vulnerability of Indian community, and therefore to undertake disaster related work and manage the disasters in a much better way so as to reduce the amount of mortality, we need frequent and accurate and timely weather updates. Understood? So that is why third statement is correct, second is correct. We have to identify correct statement. Option B therefore is the right answer. Many of you had guessed it correctly. Yes, Baga Swings, you have guessed it correctly. Good morning, Baga Springs. Good morning, FTY. Good morning, Bulbul. Good morning, Gaurav. Jai Hind. Yes, Bulbul, you were right. Gaurav, you were right. B option is the right answer. Now, before the end of today's session, I'll also be taking up this mains question. Examine the implications of agreement on agriculture under the WTO on India's agricultural sector, and discuss how India has faced difficulties in meeting the commitments of AOA with the need of ensuring food security and support to its farmers. So this article will be, or this question will be solving before the end of today's session, as this requires discussion of what are the obligations on countries like India under the Agreement of Agriculture, which is a part of World Trade Organization. And such agreement on agriculture restricts India's ability to provide subsidies, which you naturally understand have implications on ability to provide food security and ensuring monetary support to farmers. So we'll discuss in detail what is agriculture or agreement of agriculture is all about. Now, for sake of your revision of previous month's current affairs, we have also decided to put monthly current affairs. I have begun this session by taking the economy monthly current affairs for the December month last year. So you'll be in a better position if you are to watch this video and revise it thoroughly, because it will help you consolidate the learning that you have done over the past month. Correct? So please make sure to watch this video. This is available on the videos channel on the same YouTube channel that you're watching the video right now. Understood? Now, before much delay, let me first move with the article of the day that appeared on the very front page of the Indian Express newspaper. It states that the day after Trump's inaugural, will take place on January 20th, and this will be attended by the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, which will be a representative of Indian government, and it is expected that the day after, on 21st of January, the first meeting of Quad under the current dispensation of United States government will happen. Now we'll discuss what is this Quad grouping. As I told you, this is likely to take place in the Washington DC, and this Quad grouping consists of 4 countries called United States, Australia, Japan as well as India, and this will be the first meeting under the Trump 2.0 administration, which is expected to take place on which date? On January the 21st. So in this regard, let us try to understand what is actually this grouping Quad. Now it is formally was known as Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, and it began as a very loose partnership after the devastating tsunamis of the year 2004 happened. Now in this tsunami, India, along with many countries located in the Indian Ocean region, it witnessed a huge devastation due to tsunami, and it led to deaths of lakhs of people. Now, to undertake disaster relief and rehabilitation efforts, many countries pitched in, which included countries like Japan, Australia as well as United States. So, they helped us immensely in order to alleviate the disaster of tsunami and also to construct and reconstruct and rehabilitate the people who were affected. So, this was the genesis of when these countries acted together, although informally, but this helped India a lot. However, this grouping, it was formalized only in 2008 due to former Japanese Prime Minister who was killed recently, Mr. Shinzo Abe. Now, his demand, it was that any group of countries, particularly these powerful countries who have interest in the economic or Indian Ocean region, they should get together and decide on many kind of policies, be it international relation, economy, disaster relief, etc. However, as Australia and Japan, they were quite concerned about China's approach or how China will witness such kind of a grouping. So that is why they were reluctant to participate fully in such kind of grouping. So from 2007 to 2017, we saw that this or activities under this grouping was not so happening or not so frequently happening. So this was a time when this group felt dormant. That was from the period from 2007 to 2017, that is almost a period of a decade. Now, this group, it resurrected in the year 2017 because of one big factor, that is China. It became quite a huge economy and it had quite a huge military, and because of its much improved military and economic situation, China started in meddling into the affairs of many countries, including Australia, including Japan and including India. So this emerged as a problem for the members of Quad, and that is why this group resurrected in 2017 primarily towards the growing Chinese influence, and this grouping particularly had a very positive attitude by the Trump followed by the Biden administration, because they wanted this group to focus more on the Indo-Pacific region. Now, Indo-Pacific region consists of Indian Ocean region as well as Pacific Ocean, and in this area we have seen Chinese activities have started to take place, and this is against the interest of countries like India, Japan, Australia as well as US. So as to counter this Chinese rise in influence in the Indo-Pacific region, the United States government followed by Indian, Australian and Japanese government, they decided to resurrect this quadrilateral grouping. Now, what kind of a grouping is this quadrilateral grouping? Is it a military alliance like NATO, or is it an economic union like the European Union? The answer is no. It is a plurilateral framework. That means participation of many countries. Bilateral, the word itself suggests cooperation between two countries, whereas the word multilateral or plurilateral means cooperation between 2 or 3 or more countries. Understood? So this is a plurilateral framework which maritime democracies like the US, Japan, Australia as well as India, they act as a global force of good, and they deliver real positive as well as enduring impact on the region of Indo-Pacific. Now, the members of this grouping, as I have already told you, it includes Australia, India, Japan and US. However, the nature of this grouping is an informal grouping, that it is just a diplomatic partnership and not a military alliance like NATO or not a economic union like the European Union. So this is an informal grouping that the obligation on the members as far as legal obligation is concerned, there are none. However, they want to counter the rise of China, and that is why they've formed an informal partnership of sorts. Now the purpose, as I've already told you, that is it wants to support open, stable and prosperous in Indo-Pacific, which means that countries in the Indo-Pacific, they should decide inclusively based on what kind of policies that will have, and they should also be economically and militarily resilient. Now, although in text it is highlighting it wants an open, stable and prosperous Indo-Pacific, you must know that Indo-Pacific also it was an open and prosperous. However, its prosperity and freedom of navigation in this region was threatened by Chinese presence both economically and militarily. So naturally, it is favored more as an anti-China grouping. However, it is informal. That is why it is posturing itself that it is not a military union or an economic union. Therefore, in theory, it is not against Chinese interest. Now, first of all, you have to understand what is the global significance of Quad. Why are countries like Japan, US or Australia wanting to develop such kind of a quadrilateral grouping? First, as I already told you, they want to strategically balance China in the region, and all these four countries are democracy, whereas China is not. So it gives them the opportunity to get together in total and decide on what kind of policies from military standpoint or from economic standpoint they'll bring, which will counter the excesses of China in the region. Also, it ensures maritime security in the region. As I told you, Chinese deployment of naval ships in the Indian Ocean region, it threatened the Australian commercial ships as well as military ships. It threatened the passage of Japanese ship over the South China Sea region, and it also is posturing itself against India's interest by deploying its assets in countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. So all of these countries, they felt threatened that when Chinese naval vessels, they are deployed in the Indian Ocean region, it will hamper their ability to conduct free trade. It will hamper their ability to deploy their own navies in the region, and that is why they want to ensure maritime security. And the intention of their maritime security is not to threaten any other country, rather make Indo-Pacific a free, open and inclusive region. Further, the ambit of this grouping has gone beyond military. It has also reached the domain of economic collaboration, because during the time of COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that world witnessed a reduction in economic growth, and this reduction in economic growth took place because of supply chain disruption. It took place due to the lockdown that was there in many countries, and because of this economic or lesser economic growth, the countries, they became cognizant of this fact that as they were quite dependent on China for sourcing the raw materials to undertake production, and because China enforced lockdown and it also disrupted the supply chain of the world, they became more cognizant that now many countries, they are adopting a China plus one strategy, which means they are adopting or exploring options rather than China to set up their production houses. And you know, India is a prime contender to replace China as a world's leading growth economy, and that is why such groupings are also looking forward to collaborate economically. Further, during COVID-19 pandemic, we also saw that the Quad grouping, it became active and it wanted to distribute as many as 1 billion vaccines to many lesser developed countries, including India. You know, vaccines, they were a way out of COVID-19 pandemic. So as to make people not catch COVID-19 pandemic, it was necessary for us to vaccinate them. And the demand for vaccines during COVID-19 pandemic, it skyrocketed. However, to meet such demands, the supplies of vaccines were not so much. Therefore, India acted as a country which could immediately scale up its vaccine production so as to meet the demands domestically. And also, it could export many vaccines to lesser developed countries, especially in Eastern European region and in Africa. So that is why health and humanitarian effort, particularly with respect to COVID-19 vaccines, they were also undertaken place in the Quad, which highlights their increasing ambit. Further, as I already told you, the emergence of this grouping can be attributed to the 2004 tsunami incident, as the world witnessed the brunt of tsunami incident, and because of this it created deaths across the world, especially in the Indian Ocean region. So the genesis of this grouping is primarily to undertake disaster response, and hence if any disaster happens in the region, God forbid, for many reasons, the quadrilateral grouping will be in a pole position to deliver disaster relief and undertake disaster rehabilitation also. So this is why the global significance of quad grouping is. Now let us try to understand what is the significance of quadrilateral grouping, particularly for India. Now I have to understand countering the rise of China is the primary security interest of India, because India for the past few years have been involved in many clashes with Chinese army, particularly in Doklam region and in the region of Galwan, which witnessed deadly clashes as it resulted into deaths of 20 Indian soldiers and many Chinese soldiers. So countering the rise of China, particularly from a military standpoint, is India's primary security interest. And this grouping, it gives India the opportunity to collaborate with other major powers in the region like US, Australia and Japan to undertake security related capacity building of its own army. So this is how India wants to tackle the threat of China. Also, as I have already told you, Chinese navies, it is undertaking what is called as a strategic encirclement of India. That is, it is constructing bases in many regions of the Indian Ocean region. It has deployed its submarines and warships into the ports of Sri Lanka. It has looking to deploy its warships in the port of Gadar, which is located in Pakistan. So these kind of strategic encirclement by Chinese navies of India also is against the interest of India. So it wants to collaborate with these countries, especially US and Australia, as they have a significant naval presence in the Indian Ocean region, and using their infrastructure and capacity, it wants to tackle the rise of China. Further, India is undertaking an Act East policy, which looks to increase its collaboration with Southeast Asian as well as South Asian nation. And it is also undertaking this Act East policy to develop its northeastern region, which is less economically developed as compared to other Indian territories. So this is how India will want to increase its collaboration with many Southeast Asian countries. Japan, Australia, they are themselves economically developed, and hence they can undertake many economic investment, particularly in India's northeastern region. And this will also allow India to coordinate closely with other Southeast Asian nations, because they are eventually the allies of US. So this is how India is trying to strengthen its Act East policy. Further, India is looking to boost its own military capability, and through that it is undertaking exercises like Malabar exercise, which consist of again US, Australia, Japan as well as India. So these kind of exercises, it increases the collaboration between the armies of these countries. It increases the ability of these armies to conduct joint operations in the region, and which postures their readiness to counter any threat which may be emerging from China. So this is how India is trying to boost its military capabilities. Further, India is looking to cooperate with these countries under the ambit of technological or economic cooperation. As I already told you, the world is looking at an alternative of China through China Plus One policy, which means India is in a prime position to act as an alternative of China. As other countries, they might set up their manufacturing factories in India, which will increase India's employment prospect. It will lead to India's economic growth. Further, technological cooperation in development of semiconductors is very important, and here US as well as Japan, they are major players, as they have significant amount of development for the semiconductor sector. They have companies who have the potential to manufacture semiconductors, and looking at these collaborations, India would want their companies to set up their semiconductor manufacturing units inside India's own territory. Also, as I told you, the supply chain of the global value chains across the world, it was disrupted because of COVID-19 pandemic, and hence it emerged that many countries, they should collaborate in order to protect their own supply chains from any effect by China. And that is why supply chain resilient initiative was brought by Australia, Japan as well as India to counter the dominance of China's over the world supply chain. So this is how such kind of an initiative will not just be beneficial for the globe, but it will also be beneficial for countries like India. Understood? Now let us try to solve our first practice question of the day. Consider the following statements regarding the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, also known as Quad. It is a military alliance consisting of India, Japan, US and Australia. Although it is an alliance of these four countries, but it is not a military alliance. It is just an informal diplomatic meeting or partnership. So, first statement here is incorrect. Now, the Quad, it was primarily established to promote economic integration among member countries. It is not. It is primarily established to undertake maritime security, to ensure open, free and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. So, this is the primary reason why Quad was established. Afterwards, it was established or it was seen that it might also promote economic integration of the countries. So, this is the secondary objective, not the primary. Primary was always the maritime security, means open, free and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. So, second statement also is incorrect. Now, the Malabar naval exercise is often associated with Quad groupings, you understand. Like Quad, Malabar also includes US, Australia, Japan and India. That is why the Malabar exercise is often used as a reason why these collaboration between the armies or the security forces of these countries will increase. So, only third is correct, first and second is incorrect, and we have to identify what incorrect statements. Therefore, option A, 1 and 2 are incorrect is the right answer to this practice question. Now, Baga Springs, can you do monthly CA for IR and Polity too? We'll see based on my work commitments if I'll be able to do it or not. Baga Springs, will you cover labor laws with regards to L&T article? Let's see what I will cover. Stay tuned for that. Now, as I was saying, let us move to the second article of the day. This article appeared in today's newspaper on the 17th page, that is the economy page, and it highlights that the QS Future Skills Report was published, and in this report, which was published by a body called QS, it is a data analytics and security and services provider in the education sector grouping, and this publishes a report every year called World Future Skills Index. Now, based on this index, which was published in 2025, India secured the rank of 25 across all the indicators, and it is termed as a future skills contender. Now, these are the 4 parameters based on which the report is compiled. We'll be discussing what kind of these parameters are and what it includes, and India has secured 25th rank overall. Now, as I was saying, we'll be discussing this indicator. If you are not able to watch it, do not worry. Let us first of all try to understand what is this index all about. It is a global ranking system that evaluates any country's readiness to meet the demands of evolving job market in the economy. Now, you understand, as world including India is undertaking economic development and technological progress, the kinds of jobs that are required in the economy, they are becoming more technical and more high profile in nature. So, in order to undertake these kind of jobs, people also need to have high amount of skills and education. So, this report, it analyzes first of all the demand of jobs, and it also analyzes the supply of workforce, of whether the workforce is skilled or not. Understood? Now, based on this report which was published in this year, India was ranked as 5th among all countries, calling it as a future skills contender. However, the toppers of this index, which included US, UK, Germany, Australia, Canada, they were categorized as future skill pioneers. That means the pioneers are the one who are toppers, whereas the contenders are the one who have a significant amount of potential. However, some work remains to be done. Understood? Now, this report, it judges the ability of any country in terms of future skills based on 4 different parameters. First 2 parameters are called future of work and academic readiness. Future of work determines or evaluates the country's ability or readiness to recruit for the skills needed in the jobs for tomorrow, which means the companies in any economy, if they are demanding high quality jobs, the future of work index in that country will be quite high. Also the academic readiness, whether such kind of courses are being offered in the country or not, or whether such country are ready or having a significant academic capacity to provide for high skilled and high technical jobs. So this is what academic readiness is all about. So from skill or from supply and demand perspective, you understand these kind of two indicators determine the demand for jobs in the economy. That is, presence of companies and presence of academic institutions means that there is a significant amount of demand for high skilled and future proof jobs in the economy, and that is why under these two indicators India has secured higher amount of ranking, or India is better placed than many countries. Now another two indicators, they determine the supply of workforce. First is skills fit, which measures how well the countries are equipping their graduates with the skills which may be required for works of tomorrow, and also the economic transformation of the region. Now this consists of two parameters, that is capacity of the economy and also the ability of economy to consider or to undertake innovation in the kind of jobs. So these are the parameters, or these two parameters are the one that takes care of the supply of workforce. And as I told you, the first two parameters dealt with the demand of workforce in the economy. Understood? Now let us try to understand what are the areas in which India is better placed than many countries, or what are the strengths of India's economy. Now in this future of work, which as I have already told you, that the kind of work which may be emerging in the economy demands or depends upon the kind of companies that are operating in the economy. Now as India is a growing economy, so you can understand the companies, they are looking to technologically innovate themselves, and to innovate themselves they require a highly skilled workforce. So in terms of availability of jobs, India is better placed, and that is why it is secured second rank just after the US. So this evaluates how well the job markets, they are prepared for jobs for tomorrow. So India's job market, it is adequately prepared for jobs for tomorrow. Whereas India's economic capacity is concerned, it is world's largest growing major economy. And that is why the economic capacity of India and the potential of India to grow further is immense. That is why India secured full marks in this indicator, highlighting a strong base for future economic transformation. So these are the two areas of strength as far as Indian economy is concerned. Now let us try to understand what are the challenges which have been identified in this report. And the first challenge, which you may have already guessed, was the skills fit. That, as I have already told you in our previous discussions, only 15% of India's workforce, they are skilled in any kind of work, whereas in terms of formal skilling, only 5% of workforce have achieved their formal skilling degrees from a formal institution, whereas the rest 10%, they have only achieved their skillings from informal sources. So because the presence of labor in India is majorly non-skilled, that is why in terms of skills fit, India has fallen behind many countries. The second factor is economic transformation. As I told you, India's economic capacity is intense and quite growing further. However, in terms of future-oriented innovation, which will sustain the kind of jobs that are offered in the economy, India is lagging behind. Further, there are many higher education gaps in the country because the kind of education provided in the higher education institutions like college, they are not adequate for the workforce if they want to undertake highly skilled work. And this highlights that there are significant education gaps which prohibit people from undertaking entrepreneur and innovative mindset, because what is the mindset of Indian graduates? That will get into any kind of government jobs, right? So this kind of a mindset among Indian youth that want government jobs, so they'll not be able to risk their money or their innovation or their capacity in undertaking businesses, right? How many people have you heard that are wanting, or if they've already started a company called a startup? Not many, right? But on the other hand, how many people do you know they are appearing for one kind of a government exam like UPSC or other exams? There may be many. So this highlights the mindset in our country. It does not pay, or it does not encourage people from undertaking risks in form of starting new businesses. Rather, they are looking to undertake safe employment in form of government employment. So this is kind of a problem that India is facing, that this kind of an education which promotes rote learning, it does not encourage innovation, and that is what the reason which is highlighted in this report also. Now, let us try to look what are the recommendations given in the report, or how can India be better placed among world economy in order to provide the workforce and the skilling for many youths in the country. Now, first is to undertake higher education reforms. As you can understand, the Indian universities in general, they have to embed in their curriculum the process of creativity, problem solving and entrepreneurial thinking, because it will help individuals to think on their own, to take risks which might be quite beneficial for them in the long term. And that is why you need stronger collaboration between, first of all, academia as well as industry, because industry will tell academia how much kind of a jobs we are offering, what kind of skills that we require out of the workforce, and based on this demand which is created by the industry, the academia will try to educate and skill the workforce as it was required. Also, there is a need to invest in future oriented innovation and sustainability. Now, there is a reason that in India, primarily the research and development activities, they are done majorly by the government and government related agencies, whereas the private related agencies, they only contribute to about 0.5% of the GDP as far as research and development is concerned. So, this inhibition by the private sector to undertake research and innovation is detrimental to India's technological progress and innovation. That is why we want the private companies particularly to invest in future innovation, as it will help technologically advance India's economy. Further, there is also a need to develop skills level of the Indian workforce. As I have already told you in the last slide, that the amount of people in our workforce who are skilled are just 15%, whereas formal skilling is concerned, they are just 5%. So, we need people to undertake skill training and development, which will help address the skill gap, and it will also prioritize the relevant skill training which is demanded by the industry in general. So, these kind of measures, that is higher education reform, investment in future oriented innovation and addressing the skill demand gap, this will help Indian economy grow further. Now, moving to another article. This article appeared in yesterday's Indian Express newspaper, that is on 17th of January 2025, and this appeared on page 8 of the newspaper. Now, this news was left out yesterday because there were many other important articles. However, today's newspaper, as it is quite content wise thin, it allowed me to discuss this article, which is very important as far as India's science and technology is concerned. So, let us try to understand this. Now, the context of this article, first of all, is that a day before yesterday, the Union Cabinet, it approved establishment of a third launch pad at the Sriharikota's Satish Dhawan Space Center. Now, Satish Dhawan Space Center remains in news throughout the year because of many launches which is done by the India's Space Research Organization. It undertakes launches of its rocket from this very launch pad which has been there in Sriharikota. Now, there are existing 2 launch pad, and the construction and establishment of third launch pad has now been approved. So, let us try to understand what will be the features of this third launch pad. Now, as you know from our previous discussion, the India Space Research Organization is undertaking huge capacity building of its space program, and for that it needs many newer infrastructure and launch vehicles, such as new generation launch vehicles, or it wants to improve upon its existing GSLV, also known as Launch Vehicle Third. Now, to accommodate these newer kind of rockets and their related infrastructure, we need a new launch pad, and that is why the third launch pad was approved. Further, this kind of a launch pad will also integrate a kind of an horizontal integration of rockets. Now, the rockets, they are quite lengthier in size. So, you understand, they need to be manufactured in smaller components, and these smaller components will have to be integrated before they are launched into space. Now, currently, the process of integration or construction of rocket is made vertically. However, this creates many kind of a problem, that is the time taken for vertical integration of rocket, it is quite huge. So, ISRO, it is trying to shorten the amount of time that it takes to integrate a rocket by undertaking the process of horizontal integration, and this newer launch pad, it will have the facility or the necessary infrastructure to undertake the horizontal construction of rocket, and which then again will be sent into space. Understood? Further, this launch pad, it will be designed to maximize industry participation. Now, on any launch pad, you need services which may be done by ISRO or may be done by private companies, and what if there is a newer capacity or an area where the private companies will set up their factories or their outlets, which will help ISRO to undertake their services and help when launching or integrating any kind of rocket. So this provides for a newer capacity expansion. This provides for a newer technology called horizontal integration of rocket, which will reduce the amount of time taken for integration of rockets, and it will also allow the participation of private sector. Further, it will also support future space missions. As you understand, the future space missions, particularly sending humans into space or sending the space station or undertaking exploration of other planets, it will be done through this very launch pad, and also it will support India's manned space flight, because you understand whenever India is spending or sending humans into space, it will require the necessary infrastructure on ground to support and enable them to live on the ground whenever they are preparing for the launches, and these will be established in the third launch pad. Further, it will provide for a backup of existing infrastructure. As I have already told you, there are 2 launch pads already. First one is primarily used for launch of PSLVs, and it has been in operation for as many as 30 years, whereas the second launch pad has been in service for nearly 20 years. So it will not just help complement the existing launch pad, but it will also help act as a reserve for second launch pad, that for some reason, if the launches cannot happen over the first and second launch pad, it might happen on the third launch pad. Understood? Now, the location of Sriharikota is very important from our discussion. As you can see, Sriharikota is located on India's eastern seaboard, and it is just few kilometers north of the city of Chennai, which is a major seaport in the region. But why is a spaceport located on the eastern seaboard and not on the western part of India's seashores? So let us try to understand why particularly government has chosen Sriharikota for its previous and for its newest launch pad. Now, there are many reasons. First is that Sriharikota has a significant geographical advantage, because Sriharikota is located in the southern part of our country, which makes it Sriharikota quite close to the equator. Now, as you can understand, the earth, it rotates on its own axis, right? And the speed of this rotation near the equator, it is quite high as compared to the speed of rotation near the polar regions. So the closer your launch pad is to the equator, the highest will be the Earth's speed in that region. And this speed of Earth, which rotates on its own axis, can be utilized by rocket whenever they are pushed into outer space, and this will help rocket increase their velocity without burning extra fuel, thereby also reducing the fuel consumption. So this advantage any space organization would want to have, and naturally when you understand India has southern part of the country, so when you construct your launch pad in the southern region, it will help you make it closer to the equator and take the advantage of Earth's speed of rotation. Also, as it is located on the coast, so you understand any debris which might fall out of the rocket after it burns away, it might fall into the ocean called Bay of Bengal. Understood? So whenever a rocket launching is happening like that, it goes like this. So the resultant debris might fall into the Bay of Bengal region, which is not inhabited by any population. And this also negates the risk of loss of human and infrastructure. That is why it is launched over Bay of Bengal, ensuring that the debris, they fall in uninhabited areas, and also minimizes the risk to human population. Further, there is already a presence of established infrastructure in Sriharikota, so the cost of construction of new infrastructure and maintenance will also be less for ISRO, as it does not have to maintain any alternative site. That is why, to reduce the cost and provide the logistical support system, was the nature why the Sriharikota was chosen for the third launch pad as well. Also, there is a very favorable weather conditions in Sriharikota, because the disturbances in weather are not happening, and it is a relatively stable condition as far as weather related changes is concerned. Now, stable conditions for weather, it is very required for the launch of space vehicles, because higher wind speed or increased rainfall can create many difficulties for launch of rockets. That is why any nation would choose a region which has a stable weather condition, and Sriharikota provides just that. So these are the 4 reasons why Sriharikota was chosen for the third launch pad, because it already has 2 launch pads, and it provides a geographical advantage because it is located close to equator, it is in a coastal region, and it provides a favorable or stable weather conditions. Now, let us try to consider or solve another question. Consider the following statements regarding Sriharikota. It is strategically located near equator, which helps the rocket gain additional velocity due to Earth's rotation, reducing the fuel consumption. Quite straightforward, as I have already told you, because the velocity of Earth's rotation, it is highest near the equator and it is lowest near the polar regions. So, whenever any launch pad or the space launch pad is constructed closest to equator, it provides higher amount of launch speeds. Further, the location of Sriharikota allows for the rocket debris to fall over the Arabian Sea, minimizing the risks to human population. Now, where is Sriharikota located? Anyone? Can you answer me? Hi Shabbir, you joined late. FTY is becoming sarcastic for us. I want to make the session interactive and fun for you guys. FTY, if India is in alliance with US in Quad, so what are the factors that led US to put India on second tier? Now, you have to understand that countries like Japan and Australia, they are quite close to US, whereas India, it is only becoming increasingly aligned with US. However, it manages its relationship well with other adversarial nations to US like Russia, etc. So that is why the level of India's closeness with US is not that close as compared to the countries like Japan and Australia. That is why India was in the second tier. Now, the location of Sriharikota, as I have already told you, is located in Bay of Bengal or close to Bay of Bengal and not Arabian Sea, and that is why any debris which might fall out of the rockets which are launched from Harikota will fall into Bay of Bengal and not Arabian Sea. Therefore, second statement is incorrect, and we have to identify correct statement. Only one was right. Therefore, option A is the right answer. Moving to another article, this one appeared yesterday in the Indian Express newspaper in the op-ed section. So, it appeared on page 11 on the 17th of January. Right. Now, this article highlights that the chairman of his L&T, he has said or he has advocated for a 90-hour work week. Now, is 90-hour work week healthy or not? We'll discuss it in today's article. Now, why have I placed this article in GS paper 1, particularly in the section of society? Now, the relations between people or the conduct of society depends on many things, one of which is the ability of people to work, and how it helps us interact with other humans in our workplace is a matter of Indian society. That is why I have kept this article in the Indian society. Now, let us discuss the context of this article, and as I've already told you, recently the chairperson of Larsen and Toubro, which is a behemoth company responsible for construction, IT sector, etc., the chairman of this company has suggested for a 90-hour work week. Now, previously, even famous businessmen like Mr. Narayan Murthy, who is the founder of Infosys, India's second largest IT company, he has also advocated for a 70-hour work week. So, there is a competition among many people, especially the corporate people, to advocate for higher work week that will enable them to come into news. Now, the subject of our today's discussion is not the competition among corporates, but rather whether 90-hour or 70-hour work week is good for India or not. So, let us try to understand many arguments, not from a legal standpoint, but from a society standpoint. So, how can such a huge amount of work burden on any person be good or bad for India's economy or Indian society in general? So, let us first discuss the arguments which favor such longer work weeks. First of all, in India's culture, the work, it is not seen as an economic obligation. Rather, it is seen as a method of worshipping, as there is a word or philosophy called Karma Yoga, that is, the work is essential for any human being, and based on this philosophy, it is said that work should not be seen as an economic transaction or not as a compulsion, but rather it can be seen as a sense of fulfillment, that once a person works somewhere, it not just provides them with the livelihood or salary, but it also enriches them spiritually and intellectually. So that is why one of the reasons people say that the philosophy of Karma Yoga, it provocates or it advocates the philosophy of work to be seen as a worship, not as an economic transaction. Another factor is the reason of economic necessity. Now, you know, India is a developing country and the levels of economic development per capita in India is quite far behind the developed countries. So, in order to reduce this gap between developed countries and India, we need to work harder. So, this is an economic reason that as people will provide or put more hours in work, it will lead to higher economic productivity, and also it will lead to increased economic growth. So this is the economic reason cited by many advocates so as to bring longer work weeks in the region. Now, whatever the arguments I am providing in this article, this can be used in GS paper 1 answer writing. Also, these can be used for arguments in the essay. So this is not just important from GS paper 1, but it is also important if you were to write an essay on such articles, as essay requires you to critically think overall and also provide arguments both in support of your argument and against your arguments. Further, fulfilling the duties and responsibilities also is seen as a reason why we need to have longer work weeks, because the people who are working anywhere, they do not just have responsibilities as far as their companies are concerned, but they also have a duties to fulfill, to act as a dutiful son, dutiful daughter, dutiful mother or dutiful father. As a person who is working quite hard, they will get higher amount of money, and naturally this will help them fulfill the duties as they might be the sole breadwinner of the family. Further, they have certain responsibilities towards their job profile also, as their companies will stand to benefit from higher working hours, and these are the reasons quoted by the advocates of longer work weeks. Further, there are many role models in our Indian society. They are known for their tireless work. Prime Minister Modi, for example, he is known for putting in longer hours in offices despite being more than 74 years old. Also, Swami Vivekananda, he was also an advocate of longer workers because he felt that it was the inherent nature of a human being to fulfill his obligation towards the society, and it also included his obligation towards whatever work that human is conducting. So these are the reasons what is cited for the longer work weeks. And additionally, India's workforce in general, they are unorganized in nature. So you might have witnessed hawkers who might be selling very goods and services near your houses, like vegetable sellers or sellers who provide tea. So you must be seeing them working round the clock, that they open their shops early in the morning and they close their shops late in the night, which enables them not to gain higher amount of money or earn higher profit, but it is also seen as a service towards the society. So as these unorganized nature of workforce in India, they are not subjected to any legal restrictions of working hours, so they put up longer hours, which enables them to have a better sense of life. Also, there is an economic necessity that once you earn higher amount of salaries through longer working hours, it will increase your standard of living, and it will also increase to levels of economic development and personal development in India. So these are the reasons cited by the advocates on why we need longer work weeks. But you understand, such a huge demand can also create many problems. So let us try to understand now what are the arguments that go against the very philosophy of longer working duration. Now, first of all is the process of gender inequality. Now, you know that men in general, they have lesser obligation as far as their homes are concerned, so they'll be more disposed towards working for longer hours. Whenever you make similar demands out of women, you understand women, they face dual problems, that they have obligation towards their work also, but they have obligation in their homes also, so as to take care of the elderly, so as to do domestic chores, or to also take care of their children. And these kind of a domestic work disparity that exists currently in Indian society between men and women, this will mean that the men will try to work more for longer hours, whereas the women will not be able to do. And this will reinforce the social inequality that exists, because we understand women, they face significant disadvantage as compared to men when it comes to participation in workforce. And when you impose longer work hours, women will also try to less participate in workforce because of their domestic obligation. So rather than achieving social equality in terms of parity between men and women, we are promoting social inequality by longer working hours. Also, just by putting longer working hours, you did not want to ensure the increased productivity, because there might be a time that a person who is working for longer hours may face burnout, and this will hamper his ability to productively do his or her own work. Further, there is a negative impact on work-life balance because you understand a person, be it a man or a woman, they are a social animal, that they do not just work somewhere, but they do also have obligations as far as their friends, families and loved ones are concerned. So as to have them balance both of these obligations, we need to provide work-life balance, whereas 90 hours work week means about 18 hours of work every day. It will just leave them 6 hours of time to undertake every other activity in their work. So this will impact negatively the work-life balance, which is very essential for any human being to exist in the society. Also, it will lead to cultural and economic misalignment. As I told you, man or a woman is a social animal and they need to participate in the cultural development, whereas if they work about 18 hours of day every day, so how do you think they'll be able to participate or enrich them intellectually and culturally? Not right. So these are the arguments that go against the longer working hours. So we have to discuss for our essay purposes or for our society's sake both sides of the argument. And you know, such kind of a longer work weeks in general, they go against the very fabric of human being, because it can lead to burnout, it can lead to diminished productivity at work, it negatively affects their work-life balance, and it may also perpetuate the amount of social inequality that exists in India currently. Now moving to the next article, but before that, you know what to do. You have to watch this video on the link given above, as it helps you quite immensely by providing you the ability to download the videos for offline viewing. You'll also have the notes then and there itself, and you can also practice your knowledge using the interactive MCQs that we provide. Now, let us move to another article. This article appeared on page 9 of the Indian Express yesterday, and it appeared day before yesterday, I guess. So it appeared on 16th of January 2024. Now it appeared on page 9 and it stated that the Supreme Court, it has actually pulled the Enforcement Directorate over the stringent bail condition that the ED told that the exemptions that are currently extended to women and children, they are not applicable. So the Supreme Court has criticized the Enforcement Directorate. So let us first of all try to understand what are the stringent bail conditions under the PMLA and what kind of exemptions are provided for bail in PMLA and how the women and children are exempted from it. Now, such article, it is given in the section 45 of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, based on which the ED discharges its duties, and it provides for two conditions based on which the bail can be granted to an accused. Now, these two conditions are, first of all, that the courts, they have to ensure that there is a reasonable ground for innocence, that is, a person accused of a financial crime, according to the court, may not have been involved in the such offence. So on those conditions, the bail might be given until the final decision. Further, this court have to ensure that there is no likelihood of that person who is going on bail to further commit an offence under this act. So that is the two conditions that the court must ensure before granting a bail to another person. And the burden of proof, whether the person will be involved in a crime after bail or not, or whether he or she is not responsible for the crime, is not on the prosecution but rather on the accused, which makes this provision quite stringent in nature. However, there are certain exemptions given under this provision, that women minors who are below the age of 16, people who are sick or infirm individuals, they may be granted by bail if the special court directs or not. And the argument of Enforcement Directorate was that these kind of stringent sections should be applicable to all and no exemption should have been provided, and this is why the Supreme Court criticized the Enforcement Directorate. Now let us try to understand what is the Enforcement Directorate. It is a specialized agency of Government of India which enforces economic laws and combats the financial crimes in the country, and naturally it comes under the Ministry of Finance, particularly the Department of Revenue. Now, once it was established back in 56, it was known as an enforcement unit which functioned under the Department of Economic Affairs. However, it was renamed as Enforcement Directorate in 57, and in 1960 it went from Department of Economic Affairs to Department of Revenue, and under Department of Revenue it continues to function even today. Now, the acts under which the ED can legislate or investigate crimes. These are 4 acts. First is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act 1974, as it allows the ED to arrest and detain people under preventive detention for the violation of FEMA Act. And also there was this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018, which is also under the ambit of ED. Now, the office of ED director is in news because the ED director acts as the head of ED, and the tenure of ED director initially is of 2 years. However, it can be extended for 3 more years if the central government wants. Now, the ED director is appointed under the section 25 of CVC Act 2003 by the central government, and they do so only after the recommendation of a selection committee which is headed by the Central Vigilance Commissioner. Understood? So, these are the important provisions based on which the EDs can act, and also the tenure of ED director, because it has been in news, I have discussed it today. Now, let us move to the last article of the day, which appeared not in the newspaper but on the website of the Indian Express. Now, I have taken this article because I have a surprise, frankly, because such article naturally should have been appearing in the news, because it is very important for India's economy and also for UPSC exam. So, I have taken the liberty of taking this article from the website itself, and it states that the protesting farmers who are protesting right now on the borders of Haryana and Punjab, they have demanded from the government that it should withdraw itself from the World Trade Organization, because according to farmers, the agreement of agriculture, which is a part of WTO, it is fundamentally biased against developing nations like India. Now, let us first understand what is this agreement of agriculture. It aims to facilitate international trade in agricultural goods by putting limits on how much a country can provide as an agricultural subsidy to the farmers. Understood? Now, the kind of subsidies provided by the countries, they are divided into 3 categories. First is a green box subsidy, which includes subsidy for research and development, expansion of irrigation facility, or providing income support to farmers, which does not or is not a product specific, like PM Kisan Yojana, which provides 6,000 rupees every year to farmers. Because these are non-distortory in nature, hence there are no limits which are imposed on green box subsidies. So, theoretically, according to agreement on agriculture, government can provide any amount as an income support, because it does not lead to any kind of distortion in the market. The second kind of subsidy, it is called as blue box subsidy, and it is done through limiting the production by imposing the production quotas or caps, or requiring farmers to set a part of their land. So, these kind of subsidies, it is limited by the agreement of agriculture by putting a amount of cap on the farmers, that they cannot grow a certain crop beyond certain number. Understood? So, these are the second category. Now, the third category, which is very important from our exams perspective, is called as amber box subsidy, as nearly all domestic support measures which distorts production, like provision of free electricity, provision of subsidized fertilizers, or procuring food grains under the MSP program, under the PDS program, etc., these constitute as a part of amber box subsidy. Now, there are certain limits on the governments that they can only provide subsidies up till a certain limit. So, what are those limits? For developed nations, they can only provide 5% of the total value of the country's production back in 1986 and 88. Now, suppose if the country produced about rupees 100 crore worth of agricultural goods in the year 1986 and 88. So, from that logic, only 5 crore worth of subsidies can be provided to farmers for developed countries. Whereas for developing countries, this number is 10% of the total value of production, but you have to ensure that the production value here is 86 to 88 and not the current production value. So, this kind of a provision that says that the countries will have to provide only 10% of subsidies based on the production value of not today but of 86 to 88 is what is the major cause of concern. And according to farmers, the WTO rules, as they have favored developed countries more, because you understand developed countries, they already had a huge amount of agricultural production even back in 86-88. Whereas countries like India and China, they are growing slowly, and as a result, their productions, which was back in 86 to 87, it is quite less compared to production what they are doing now. So, if any cap on subsidies have to be decided, they have to be decided on the current production levels and not the production levels of more than 35 years behind. Okay, so this is why the farmers highlight that the WTO rules, it favors the developed countries and it acts or it's detrimental to the interest of smaller Indian farmers. Also, there are rules which place restrictions on India's ability to procure food grains based on the MSP program or distribute food grains from the PDS program, because all of these are amber box subsidies and India can only provide about 10% worth of value of the production back from 86 to 87. Also, as the subsidies are capped at 10%, and it does not take into account the adjustments for increase in production after 86 to 88. That is why the farmers are saying that such kind of a rule almost invariably favors the developed nation and it goes against the interest of the Indian nation. Understood? Now, based on this discussion, let us try to understand how to approach this answer. Examine the implications of Agreement on Agriculture on World Trade Organization on India's agriculture sector and discuss how India has faced difficulties in meeting commitments under AOA and need to ensure food security and farmer. Now, naturally, in introduction, you will introduce what is AOA. In the body of the answer, you will first write the 3 types of subsidy, that is green, blue, as well as amber subsidy. And then you will realize or write concerns associated with such subsidies, that production level is fixed from 1986 to 88. India can't provide or can't procure grains under MSP as well as PDS scheme because these are frequently challenged under the AOA agreement by other countries, and also it goes against the interest of developing countries. So this is how you will segregate your body into, first of all, describing what kind of subsidies are there and then highlighting the concerns associated with subsidy. Now you have to conclude your answer as well. Here you will write that although there is a need to prevent market distortion subsidies, but the burden of reducing those subsidies should be equally on both developed and developing nation, and the production caps or the subsidy caps should be decided based on the current production level, not the production level of about 39 to 38 years older. Understood? So this is how you will conclude your answer. Now, if you have any problem in writing this answer and if you have written your answer and you want to get it evaluated, please feel free to reach me out on the Telegram channel here. I will be more than happy to evaluate your notes. And before concluding our today's session, this is your practice question for the day and I will take this up tomorrow. Now, I hope you have a very good rest of the day. Please try to revise the topics that we have covered in the last week, as tomorrow we will not be publishing this. So I'll see you again on Monday 10 a.m. sharp. Until then, please keep reading, keep analyzing, keep revising, and more importantly, keep writing your answers. So I'll see you.